Good morning. So, thank you. Disclaimer is I'm not speaking for Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. I'm not speaking for any organization, just Paul Blake, the retired guy. And so, about me, is there, forgive me for the,
You'll click on these two to switch.
okay, thank you. So about me, I retired as a captain. I did 30 years with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. I originally got in the fire service in 1985 as a volunteer firefighter up in Providence, Rhode Island. My current capacity, I'm the treasurer with Metro-Dade Firefighters Local 1403. Upon retirement, I joined the Florida Forest Service. It was a way that allowed me to maintain my Florida Fire Service instructor. And so I joined that agency. And what I like most about it is that it took me back to my days of being a volunteer firefighter. Like guys, individuals that loved what they did and loved fire. When I retired in 2021, I had met Joy during my career back in 2008 when we were doing some basic wildland training from Miami, then Metro-Dade Fire Rescue. I met Joy Klein, and so she said, "Hey, look, would you be interested in getting involved?" I said, "Yeah, I would definitely be interested in getting involved." So, about the agency, 1935, Miami-Dade Fire Rescue started as a fire patrol, right? And so the fire patrol was basically wildland units. And when you look at the fate of the Pine Rocklands, that is pretty much the fate of the fire patrol. And what is that? Is that the fire patrol grew into what it is currently now, 77 fire stations. And why is that? Well, with the loss of the Pine Rocklands was because of the amount of development that was now being occurring. And so that is what Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, 77 fire rescue stations, all of unincorporated Miami-Dade County, 29 municipalities, 2,450 uniformed personnel. They've got dedicated response units for everything, the full service, air rescue, ocean rescue, marine, hazmat, urban search and rescue, technical rescue, and venom response. What you have to know about structural firefighters, okay? And when we talk about structural fire, we're talking about the blue pants, right? The wildland, we would say, are the one that wear the green pants. I'm not a wildland firefighter. I'm the blue pants. I'm a structural firefighter. And so protection of people and property, first and foremost, right? Their attack lines are typically flowing 220 gallons a minute. Their master streams 1,000 gallons a minute, right? Because they're going into houses. They attack from the unburned side to the burned side, okay? Different than when you'd see in the wildland. And why is that? It's because when you get a structure fire and there's potential occupants trapped, because you always want to go towards the occupants, it's going to be more to the burn side than the opposite to give you the best chance for property conservation and victim removal. All fire suppression units of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue have paramedics, okay? They're not just fire suppressions. They're medical response as well. They're staffed with 4 personnel who work 24-hour shifts, okay? The basic training they relieve in wildland firefighting is when they come in minimum standards, right? So when you get hired in the state of Florida as part of your minimum standard certification, be a structural firefighter, you receive wildland training. That's your 130, 190. That's it. That's all you get, right? So when you look at big fires, typically they're going to hit big fires of big water, right? Which goes to the master streams. So, this slide changed up, right? And this presentation is based on yesterday's slide about threats to our Pine Rocklands. And there it is right there, fragmentation and fire suppression. Why? Why is it about fire suppression that when you figure that is causing damage to these Pine Rocklands? It doesn't make sense to me. At least it didn't at the time in 2021, right? Like I spent 30 years seeing that fire was destructive, killing people, my colleagues, myself being burned by it, the fact that destruction of households and businesses. And so looking at that is that, you know, when putting out a fire, when seeing a fire, the natural reaction is to put it out. So the mission statement is, and so let's get back to Miami-Dade. 300,000 responses a year. Those 77 fire stations, 300,000 responses a year. And when you look at what it has, like lithium battery fires are an issue. So aren't the mid-rises appearing in South Dade. These are all challenges that Miami-Dade Fire Rescue has, let alone the medical response side. So when you look at Wildland, it really isn't, I don't want to say it's not important, but in the schemes of being a fire department, another fire at these sites, you put it, it is what it is. So that being said, is that, you know, there it is in the statement. When you look at the mission statement, we protect people, property, and the environment by providing proactive response to professionals. Well, what do you think when you're in the environment, right? Well, okay, the overturned fuel tanker on the expressway that's leaking fuel into the storm drains. Like, that's what I think about when I think about environment in terms of fire response. It's never these pine rocklands. It isn't about anything having to deal with these endangered land sites. So why should the fire department be involved? And well, we have a huge interface issue, right? So when you look at the WUI issue, wildland urban interface, it comes down to 3 classifications. You have your urban interface, and that's basically when they say where the leaves meet the eaves, right? It's a definable boundary. If you ever fly in from an airplane, you'll see 157 Avenue. You can see where the Everglades stops and where the where the homes start, right? And then you have included interface, and included interface, I will expand on that. That's where you have these parcel lands and you have development all around them, okay? And you have the urban intermix. Urban intermix would be the redland, right? You have structures, and then you have the wildlands, like it's most definable by it. If you go out west of Chrome Avenue between 136th Street, 184th Street, you have all these farms mixed in this environment. And these are the different challenges. What I'm going to focus on is the included interface. But when we talk about the interface, it's not just structures. Look, we don't necessarily have an issue, and we don't, like they have in California, where we're having catastrophic loss of homes. Why is that? It's because of our South Florida building code, right? If you have a home that can withstand a hurricane, it's going to withstand, for the most part, a wildland fire. The concrete walls, the impact glass, the metal roofs, they don't carry fire with that. So that's why we don't you don't see the catastrophic losses that we do. But at the same time, the earthquake includes personal property. Yeah, we have problems in boats and backyards and the sheds. And when you look at the roadways, like roadways and closure of roadways is a real issue in Miami-Dade County. Infrastructure, the telephone poles that burn, radio transmission towers, power transmission lines, they are all impacted. They are all included as far as your interface, right? It isn't just property. So that being said, is when you look at this is the map, the FEMA map about danger, threats. And the top of the map is Southwest 8th Street, okay? So when you look at our WUI aspect, you can see that this would be the urban interface. Okay, and so what the brown represents is property damage from direct flame contact. Okay, that means that if they were fire, the direct flame contact, it would have an impact on these properties. The beige represents your ember cast, right? So if you were to have your ember zone, where it would land. And if you look at the map of our endangered land sites, you'll see that it pretty much lays into southwest area below Southwest 8th Street. So that was one of the, I guess, drivers to at least get Miami-Dade Fire Rescue's attention on that. That this is something that we need to make be more proactive on. So when we talk about, as I mentioned, included interface, these are 2 sites that were on yesterday's slide. One of these is Ned Glen, which is at 87th Ave, 196th Street. And the other one would be would be, I guess, Deering West, and it's over by 176th Street, and it's kind of split up. But what do you see all around it? Like homes. And so what we have now is we may potentially have a site that, as you see, because in urban development, it goes out to 197th Avenue. And these are two different pictures, right? So maybe this may have been one time there was nothing built here, but now it has homes on it. There's a site at 248th, 127th Avenue that there was nothing around it. But now, 5 years later, it's got apartments, mid-rise apartments all around it. So these are the challenges. What I like about working with Janice is saying it's not if, but when, right? And so that has at least gotten the attention of the fire department. Now, as Joy put up, this was Trinity Pineland. And this is something else that when we talk about the environment, this is that fire, right? I never necessarily shared with, and I, and it was actually this fire that prompted me to get more involved in it. And how did I get more involved? Is that took a real interest in doing better with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, right? Because look, when you look at the damage caused to Pine Rocklands, there's no other fire department that has responded to these Pine Rocklands but Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. So they own the potential destruction towards it with fire suppression for the most part. And so looking at this look at this, right? This included interface. Could you blame, and this particular fire started at midnight, and it's all told, this fire was probably a 36-hour fire, right? It initially started at midnight. It started up in that lower corner where the triangle is, and they were out there all throughout the night, different times. Thought they had it out. It wasn't a whole lot of fire, and so they left. Right, it started endangering any structures at that point. It's not. It's contained down there. All right, well, we'll leave, and they'll come out in the morning and they'll care of it. It's nighttime, so you really couldn't fault them for not necessarily going inside, because we don't do it at the attacks at night, and especially when there's no property threatened, if you will. And then comes morning, and by the time you saw the destruction from it, what did it take? It took 14 fire trucks. Like, it took eight fire engines, 3 ladder companies, 3 rescues, and 3 chiefs just to put it under control. Like 8 hours later, and then it took another 6 fire trucks to sit on that site all through the night. It wasn't until like 8 o'clock the following morning that they actually cleared the site. So when you look at the response to that, what if we would have had something that could have dealt with that early in the morning? And it kind of bothered me with that. So I and this was the response, right? Midnight, and then they went back out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and each time they spent a couple hours on it, right? Each time they did. And then 11 o'clock in the morning, they went out there and it exploded. And it went from that corner, and it erased all the way up to the northwest corner. And all the while, you're the fire department, as you're concerned about, look at the warehouses there, right? And so, and the flame lengths are intense. Like, so what happens? Big fire, big water. And that's why we really need to work on pre-planning, right? We need to work collectively. And I got to say that it's great having the stakeholders here, Armando Nodal, our FAS at Everglades, looking forward, excited to have them on board. The fact that we have representatives from NAM here, right? We need to figure out, how can we deal with these occluded interfaces before they explode with fire? And why is that? It's because, one fire and one preserve could completely wipe out a species, right? And so it's not just the environmental side. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the protection side, the fact that, you're protecting the homes by dealing with it on a proactive basis. It's the environment about these endangered species. So when we look at pre-planning, it's not something we do for wildland sites. Like, why would I take this 20 acres at Nixon Smiley and plan out some kind of event there from the fire department side, right? If it's just right, if it's just grass, just fuels. But at the same time, I'm assuring you that this building has somebody has come through this building and done a pre-plan about where the exits are, and if they had a fire in the structure, how would they handle it? But that doesn't exist in our wildland areas. And why is that important? Well, it's important because, when you look at the fire that we had last year in South Dade, both the Palm Drive and the 167 West fire, is that nobody had ever really pre-planned that side. Like, in terms of what? It's like construction reinforced the fire breaks. And, working under an ICS at the instant command post, which the fire department is outstanding at doing, is setting up. And TACT is based on trigger points. And what would that be? That's basically that we come together and we agree that if the fire gets here, we're going to do this. If the fire gets here, we're going to do this. And that's something we haven't done. Evacuations. How would you handle a community that had to be evacuated, right? So where are you going to put potential evacuees at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon when school's in session? So those are things to think about. And the problem is that, schools, the OEM or Office of Emergency Management, they don't reimburse unless it's declared an emergency. So that's going to be the burden of the school to pick that up. The impact of road closures, right? That's part of the interface. Like, it's every year we're shutting down a highway, whether it's Chrome Avenue, it was the stretch last year. Who knows what the economic impact of that was on Monroe County? Not to mention, unfortunately, that there was actually a fatality wreck when we opened it up prematurely, right? It was, and why is that? It's because the family was driving along and the guy was towing a boat, but he was taking pictures of the fire, wasn't paying attention. He rear-ends a vehicle and he ended up killing one of the children who was actually declared brain dead and critically injured the other child. And so there's the concerns with opening roads too soon and considering fire operations. Do we take advantage of these wildfires to go ahead and just come up with a strategy that, look, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and burn it off, like, versus what? Versus potentially suppressing, staying on scene for different scenes. So those are considerations to think about. And again, so what did I do about it? Is I created a course for the battalion chiefs, command officers. I encourage participation on MDFR units on prescribed burns as much as I can. Presented a mitigation plan to the command staff on November 24th. I attended the CBBM course. Look, in terms of burn management, I'm on training wheels. Like, I'm on a tricycle. I'm not the subject matter expert at all. Where I am the subject matter, I feel, is at least on the interface issues, right? And so what we do that is work with the EO department, establish quarterly meetings where we get all the shareholders together and discuss these issues about how can we help each other. And so what is Miami-Dade Fire Rescue doing? So they have full-time staffing. We have a water tender staff full-time. It's got 2 people on it. They're going to hire a fire management officer part-time. So if it doesn't work, they can remove the position. They're looking at outfitting spare vehicles with skid units on it. And let me say is that Miami-Dade should not, people say, oh, we're going to do what? No, we're not going to be wildland. Like, that's what we have forestry for, right? We have enough on the plate in terms of everything else we do that we need to have the forestry present to help that. But if we had something like this, a skid unit where we could at least get involved in assisting in the efforts, right? The idea is to assist our cooperators, because when you look at 1,400 acres or the amount of endangered, of prescribed, pine rocklands, and you look at a 3 to 5 year fire regiment, that's a lot of fire. And when you consider that there's 80 private landowners, right, that we have to care for, like, that's also part of it, right? And that's where the fire department comes in, is that it's value added service. Like, if you are a taxpayer, this is a service that the fire department provides to you. So that's my sell to that. We did a rapid response to interface training for our personnel, which is a 215, but for structural guys. And the county's going to hire fire ecologists. Again, the quarterly meetings and looking at establishing at least wildland response units, right? And those would be of the 77 engines, maybe 4 or 5 trucks that get the regular training of wildland response. They've got some of the smaller brush trucks are trained to use them because you just can't. I don't agree that anybody can be given a Type 6 without proper training be expected to use it safely, right? Like that's not safe. So these are different things. And when we look at the destruction of pine rocklands from fire suppression, maybe we figure out that, well, the best tactic is not to bring in the heavy machinery, but to use smaller vehicles, maybe some ATVs, UTVs, some longer hose lays with that. So that's the water tender that was put in staff. It is old, an old Parks and Recreation vehicle. And so that's what I have. Thank you.